When a company develops a BCP, what is the most common thing they might overlook?
I guess if I had to narrow down a couple, one, I would say they don't often consider supply chain as part of their BCP efforts. And that's becoming even more and more critical, obviously. We've seen that with the disasters in Japan. The supply chain has become a very hot topic within the business media today. And any business continuity framework needs to consider not just the internal aspects of what a company needs to function, but it needs to consider the supply chain as well. It also needs to consider what sort of resilience their suppliers have and a way to evaluate and measure the effectiveness of their programs that they have in place. I'd say probably the second thing we see the most often is the lack of consideration of a total disaster, of a worst case type scenario. Often we'll see a company that has made an assumption that we're going to assume we're down for 30 days or 60 days, and then that's it. And then they'll go off and create a whole lot of detailed plans, again, at a very, very detailed level, without really taking a step back and saying, okay, if we lose this entire building to a fire or to a tornado or whatever it may be, what's the impact and what do we do? So they've only, they haven't necessarily accomplished anything if they're only looking at a very small disaster window and they haven't taken that worst case scenario into account. Because, our philosophy is at the end of the day, if you're prepared for the worst case scenario, you're prepared for anything.
So let's go back to the first reason, the first overlooked factor, the supply chain. Mm-hmm. What work has your group done to enhance supply chain awareness?
Well, the first thing we'll do is through our normal business impact analysis process, we'll try to do an internal analysis of the supply chain and understand what are the critical suppliers that support the business, and find out as much as we can from the operations people and their supply chain people as to who those companies are and what is the dollar impact that a disruption from them would bring. Secondly, assuming the client is able to have enough leverage to be able to get us into the doors of those suppliers, we'll actually apply a lot of the BIA concepts to the actual supplier businesses. And we call that our supplier impact analysis, where we'll go in and get a much better understanding of what is the resilience that a supplier has, what is their level of efforts towards business continuity, and what sort of ultimate exposure does the company really have for that supplier. Once you really understand all of that, again, back to specific dollar numbers, then a company can start to look at different ways to mitigate that risk, looking at a variety of options, as opposed to just, well, we've got to go find an alternative supplier.